Rhone, the story behind it. What was that first conversation and what was the vision?
We fell in love with Lululemon's product, but we absolutely hated their brand. So the first conversation was as simple as...
Ben Checketts, creative director and co-founder at Rhone.
The first conversation was as simple as, could we do what these guys are doing on a product level, but could we do it with a brand like a Nike, right? I remember putting on my first pair of Nikes, like my first real pair of Nikes, and being like, I can run faster, jump higher, right? Like I felt that because of the brand. So could we create a brand that people really love? And could we do what they're doing on the product side? And then to me, the vision, and this really came out a little bit later as we started to develop this, was, okay, who's buying this product? It's not the same as the people that are buying Nike, in my opinion. They are professionals. They are fathers. They are husbands, right? That what they want is style and consistency and quality from a product standpoint. But also, don't you think they want a brand that speaks to them? That speaks maybe with a little bit more of like a sophisticated tone.
Thank you everybody for tuning in to another episode of How the Fuck Did You Get That Job? We got to be hitting 150 episodes. And before we jump into this episode, got to give a big shout out to Open Fortune. Open Fortune has given marketers one of the most creative ad canvases by putting ads on the back of fortune cookies, reaching 150 million people monthly in 99% of zip codes. Open Fortune is the reason we're doing this today. So shout out to them for believing in this podcast, believing in me, and believing in our guests for good interviews. So without further ado, let's hit it. Today in the hot seat is Ben Checketts, the creative director and co-founder of Rhone. He has forged a past that blends creativity, strategic thinking, and a deep commitment to mental health. After graduating from BYU in 2011, Ben pursued his MBA at Duke University, a decision that set the stage for his dynamic career. His first internship post-college was at ESPN's Research and Analytics Department, which provided with him valuable insights into consumer behavior and market trends. Ben then spent 2 years at IMG College, honing his skills in regional marketing services. In 2015, Ben, along with his brother Nate, co-founded Rhone, a premium activewear brand designed for high performance and comfort. Rhone isn't just about stylish, high-quality athletic wear. It carries a mission deeply rooted in promoting mental health and well-being. Through innovative designs and thoughtful initiatives, Rhone aims to inspire men and women to lead healthier, more balanced lives. So Ben, I got to ask you, how the fuck did you get that job?
Well, first of all, David, thank you for having me. Honored to be asked to be on the podcast. And I think the way that I got this job is that we kind of, carved out our own thing. We started our own company, and when you do that, you get to start at the beginning and kind of specialize in some things that really interest you. And, I give a lot of credit to my brother, Nate, who had the vision. I always kind of wanted to do it. He's the one who actually put pen to paper and really, really made sure that we had the right business plan, the right foundation to start this business and to make sure that it had the trajectory to be very successful.
Absolutely. And so one question I always ask, and it probably is an interview question that you've been asked a bunch, but, when you were growing up in Connecticut, I don't think it was co-founding an activewear brand was what you told your first grade teacher. What was it when you wanted to grow up?
Oh, I think I still actually have. My mom is, she's great at keeping those memories. And I believe in my first grade class, when we kind of did the drawing and filled in the blank, it was be a ninja. But the guy was like going through airport security with like a suitcase full of like ninja weapons. So that was my vision.
I mean, you could probably make a career as a
traveling ninja. I mean, I think TSA has changed a little bit, but yeah.
I haven't interviewed a ninja yet, but I'm going to take a note down to get somebody who's a ninja on the show.
Yeah, that would be rad.
That'll be upcoming. Your first jobs out of college were more sports related. Was sports a big part of your life growing up?
Absolutely, yeah. Our dad worked in sports. He worked for the Knicks, and then he worked for Madison Square Garden. Kind of Knicks, Rangers, Radio City, all the television properties, and so not only sports, but sports business. And so we were not only fans of the teams, we were worried about concession sales and attendance and the team's record. And if they would go to the playoffs, contract situations, we were kind of invested in so many ways and we took it so personally. So when you'd go to school and, people would say, things about the Knicks. Like, we got in plenty of fights over that because it was so deep to us. It was like not only a fandom, but it was family as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's so fun working in sports. There's also that double-edged side of working in sports. I come from a sports background where, the glitz and glam kind of wear off a little bit, right? You start paying attention to who's buying the out-of-home placements and not the scoreboard. Are you able to still, manage that? / like, how early did that come in for you when you were noticing?
No,
that?
100%. I feel like the first time that really that shine wore off quickly was at IMG College. But what's amazing about sports is there's so many storylines and magical moments that pull you back in. And so I'll give you a great example. I'm trying to think of, I think it was 2016, 2015, 2016 season. Auburn was one of my main properties. I was working with the Auburn team a lot. They kind of weren't expected to do unbelievably in the SEC. And if you remember, they made it to the SEC championship, which was the Iron Bowl versus Alabama. It was the miracle kick return. And I was on the phone the next day with that.
I still remember I feel like that's a moment where people do remember where they were watching
100%.
that.
I was like calling the guys.
Especially you, right?
I was calling the guys at Auburn. I wish I had been to the game, but it was Thanksgiving. I was home with my family. But I was calling the guys at Auburn being like, can you believe that I was leaving voicemails everywhere because they weren't picking up their phones? But the next day I got all these texts, all these emails, and the team was just so excited. And so, yeah, the shine wears off, but there is just something, at least for me, magical about sports that always draws me back in, for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, it's community, but it's also their real life superheroes. So I don't think you weren't there for the Jimmer days, right?
I was there for the Jimmer days. Actually, my good friend is Jackson Emery, who was the 2 guard on that team. And we always joked about how Jackson had to guard 2. He was a really good defender. He would guard 2 people on the team because Jimmer did not play defense. He only played offense.
And now Jimmer's out doing his
3-on-3 thing,
like
yeah.
3-on-3.
Yeah.
That's like he's a game he's meant for, though.
No, he's built for it, yeah.
So in college, was the goal still ninja?
No, in college it started to shift a little bit. I actually majored in English, which is an unusual thing for someone in my position to be, but I had several informational interviews with people at Nike. Nike was kind of the end goal. I wanted to be at Nike, wanted to be in their marketing department, and whether it was Nike or W&K, who does most of their advertising, I didn't really know. I wanted to kind of, explore both areas of advertising and marketing. And, what they said at Nike was, we love artists, we love creatives that have a little bit of business background. We don't love business people that have a little bit of a creative background. We like the other way around. And reading and writing and speaking came very naturally to me. In fact, I still love, whenever I kind of start thinking about a campaign, I start by writing it out, right? Writing a script or writing kind of a thesis, if you will, about the campaign. And so I started there, but I knew that I needed that business background. And so that was the reason for the jump to Duke, but really loved the English major. I felt like it taught me a lot of really important things about communication and the types of communication and the breadth that you can do. So loved creative writing, took a lot of joy in writing even poetry, down to like poetry and short creative stories. Just kind of loved being exposed to all of it. And then all the literature, I think, provided a real foundation to be able to, I even had thoughts of like, oh, if I were to start my own brand, like, where would I pull from? Yeah. So being an English major was great because it exposed me. First, it, taught me a lot about communication and the different styles of communication that can happen, how to talk clearly and concisely, but also how to make things eloquent and, appealing to certain people. And then it also exposed me to a lot of literature, which I hadn't really, I'll be honest, in high school, I was always the Spark Notes kid, right? Like I always just like read this. I never read the books. I only read the Spark Notes. So I really sank my teeth into the literature, and it helped me, start to piece together this idea of like, if we were to create a brand, where would I pull from? Where would be some of the creative sources? So actually our tagline, Forever Forward, is from a Walt Whitman poem called The Song of the Open Road. And I did my capstone class on Walt Whitman. Actually, my third kid is named Walter after Walt Whitman. And so I gained a lot of just foundational communication strengths and abilities to kind of take those things that inspired me and, put them into videos and into photos that would start to build our brand.
Absolutely. And I've heard that from past guests as well as really talented friends who were English majors or creative writing majors. I was a sport management major myself, and we have a lot of listeners who are under the, in college or just out of college. And I one of my biggest regrets is not majoring in English, or creative writing or something like that, because I've honed in. And that's something that I absolutely love. But a sport management major doesn't mean that you're just going to work at Nike, right?
Exactly.
If you can write well and tell good stories, then you can, potentially build your own brand or work at Nike, etc. So that's absolutely amazing. And right after college, you end up working at ESPN.
Yeah, that's right.
And I feel like that's like, even though Nike was the dream job, like right after college doing like finding the stats, I'm guessing that's what you were doing, right? From the title.
Yeah. So our department was very interesting. So, and of course, as an intern, you kind of get exposed to all different sides, but it was the research and analytics division. So pulling stats, pulling kind of consumer behavior data from the website. Specifically, I was actually focused on kind of the periphery of the ESPN website. So there's obviously ESPN.com. And then within that, there's basketball and football and baseball. I was focused on our international properties because I had a real aptitude and a love for soccer. I also spoke Spanish, which helped. I spoke Spanish fluently. And so they had me pulling research on...
Are you still fluent?
Yes. Yeah. So as part of our church, you do 2 years of missionary service and you actually live in the country. I lived in Mexico for 2 years. And you like...
Where in Mexico were you at?
In Leon. It's central Mexico, north of Mexico City. But, I think all of those things combined to make me an ideal candidate to be focused on. At the time, it was called ESPN Soccer Net, and they were just about to start a rebrand, like just as I was leaving, and I gave them a ton of, my opinions about, you can't call it Soccer Net, you're offending, 99% of the people that actually care about this sport, and things like that. So, pulling consumer data and looking at, traffic trends and where the hot pages were, where people were clicking through, the amount of time they were spending on those pages, how we could increase kind of their duration by adding videos, by adding graphics. There was a lot of different projects that I worked on and stats that I pulled there.
Cool. So we jumped in. We were ending about ESPN. I'm curious to hear about your MBA experience. Again, like a lot of our listeners, deciding whether to get an MBA. Curious myself as well. I have friends getting MBA programs, either graduating or starting theirs. Was it something, especially now as a co-founder of a major athleisure brand, what did you take out of that experience and would you recommend it to others?
It's a great question. So I think for everybody, it is such a personal thing. It's not a one size fits all. Here's what I can tell you. If like the founding of Rhone had been at the same time as my MBA, it would have been very hard to say no to that, to choose Rhone over this. Because I did see the potential. I did see, what this could be. And I have learned so much more about real life business doing this than I ever did reading books and doing case studies and taking tests, albeit a great business school. Like I have nothing but good things to say about Fuqua. Like you just learn so much more. And I would equate it to learning Spanish. I took high school Spanish. I didn't speak any Spanish when I landed in Mexico. And when I left, like I spoke so fluently, some people would confuse me with like a native, right? So it's just hitting the ground and learning it as you go with real experience is the best way to learn about business. So if that's your goal and if that's your objective, and if you have a solid idea and a business plan, it's not that business school can't be additive, but I would recommend that you just go and you start and you invest whatever money you were going to spend in that MBA into starting your business. For me, it was a little bit different. I was a humanities major. And so when it came to like small things like networking, I didn't know what that was about. I didn't understand that. I didn't understand why I should do it. It felt like small talk to me. It felt very stupid, right? So that's it. It's kind of like the professional polishing is what I would say the MBA did the most for me, right? And I interviewed with, plenty of interesting companies as they came through. And again, kind of like this conversation, I just viewed it as, oh, this is a chance to learn about somebody's business, what they've done right, what they've done maybe not so right, and what they could have done better. And so, yeah, I would say it just added that little bit of polish that really made me have the potential to be a business leader someday.
Absolutely. And I think it's important too to still have that like real work experience, right? You got some at IMG College before going to Rhone, and especially after getting your MBA there, and then you add a like middle junior level role in sports. That's a real grinder of a position. You talk about what that taught you.
Yeah, IMG was, again, another amazing experience. We really wanted to stay in North Carolina. We loved North Carolina. That was kind of the best option in North Carolina at the time. And I was fortunate because I got to work pretty closely with, the VP of marketing there and the CEO, Ben Sutton. He was a friend of my dad's. And so, kind of like a mentor, he took me a little bit under his wing, and I got to learn from him. It was an absolute grind, especially football and basketball season. The majority of my properties were in the SEC and ACC, so we really didn't have like an off season between those two seasons. Some properties or some regional properties would say, well, like football's our strength, but basketball's not, so we don't really sell basketball. We had kind of like a breakneck, 8 or 9 months, and then you'd have a couple of light months, and then it was like right back into it, preparing for football season. What it taught me is to be attentive to the details, right? When you're a part and when you're a representative of a company that big, yeah, there's a lot of checks and balances, but if your work at the bottom isn't sharp, it's never going to make it to the top. But if it's really, really good, then it gets in front of the right people. You get the recognition that you need. And so, double, triple checking everything was super, super important. I'm really grateful for a few mentors that taught me that.
I'd love to, hear about, we're going to get into the meat of this interview, which is Rhone and the story behind it, and just the back of the napkin idea and that first conversation with your brother. What was that first conversation, and what was the vision?
Well, the first conversation and the vision are two really different things, because, and I'll explain it why, because we fell in love with Lululemon's product, but we absolutely hated their brand. So the first conversation was as simple as, could we do what these guys are doing on a product level, but could we do it with a brand like a Nike, right? That we grew up, I remember putting on my first pair of Nikes, like my first real pair of Nikes, and being like, I can run faster, jump higher, right? Like I felt that because of the brand, right? Yeah. Everybody's experienced that, I think, to a certain extent. So could we create a brand that people really love, and could we do what they're doing on the product side? And then to me, the vision, and this really came out a little bit later as we started to develop this, was, okay, who's buying this product? It's not the same as the people that are buying Nike, in my opinion, or Under Armour or Adidas. It's people that have a little bit more money. It's people that aren't as focused on what professional athletes are wearing. They are professionals. They are fathers. They are husbands, right? They are just a little bit more into the swing of things in their lives, that what they want is style and consistency and quality from a product standpoint. But also, don't you think they want a brand that speaks to them, that speaks maybe with a little bit more of like a sophisticated tone, right? That doesn't beat you over the head with these messages of, if you have a body, you're an athlete and you should train like LeBron James. To a certain point, like you get to a point in your life and you're like, man, I just want to be able to get out of bed in the morning and not feel like garbage, right?
And like, I don't think I'll ever be able to dunk.
However,
however hard I work, I don't think so, right? Maybe on an 8-foot rim. But I'm curious, you spoke about Lululemon, and like, what did you they have an amazing business, an amazing product, and a different market. What about their brand were things that you were like, we want to differentiate from them with this?
Yeah, so keep in mind, this was when we were first having these conversations. This was like 2009, 2010. I will say their brand has kind of changed and developed a little bit in this sense. But at the time, they were really only speaking to yogis. And yoga was something that I knew I probably should be doing, but it's like the last thing I wanted to do. right? I didn't find it very aspirational. I felt like, their brand also spoke primarily to women. As a man, that's like, it just didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel comfortable going in their stores. My wife is Canadian. She's from Calgary, and she went to, she grew up with Lululemon's second ever retail store in her backyard. So she loved the brand, and I loved the product. So I would like send her in to buy me product and bring it out because I hated going into the store. It just was a brand that I couldn't connect to in the same way that I could connect to Nike. So yeah.
Absolutely. And so take me through that first conversation, like with your brother, and what did that look like, and how did that become where, like, what parts of that led to where it is today, and what parts were just absolutely scrap that?
Yeah. Really interesting question, because we had multiple experiences each where we were, at the time we would both wear Lululemon, and we felt like we were getting almost like hate from both sides. Like, men would make fun of us because we were wearing a brand named Lululemon, and women would make fun of us because they were like, oh, that makes you less of a man if you wear that. And so, but we love the product. We love the subtlety and the style of it. So that first conversation was, hey, do you really think we could marry these two things together? Create a brand that guys love and also create a product that they love. And let's start men's only with no, end in sight. We could finish this thing off men's only. If women's comes down the line, we think we can handle that, but that's so far off in the future. Let's just get men's right. And, from there, it was starting a business plan. It was starting to draft things, and it was starting to look at the market space and see where all the white space was. And there really was this white space between the big box brands that were selling to everybody, the very niche brands that were selling to one category that were a little bit more expensive. And we said, okay, could we create kind of a multi-use product where, yeah, you can wear it for CrossFit, but you can also wear it for running. And can we make it premium and quality? And then what other categories can we start to explore? So we started to look at lifestyle, right? The stuff you wear to work. Can we start to innovate around that? Because people are going to start to expect the same thing from their lifestyle products that they're seeing in their active products, which is enhanced comfort, enhanced technology, anti-odor technology, sweat wicking, etc. I remember the first day that I went to business school at Duke, it was incredibly hot, still summertime in North Carolina. And I wore a Charles Tyrewhit shirt. And by the time I got there, I was riding my bike. I was covered in sweat. And I was like, great first impression. Now I'm the sweaty guy at business school, right? And if I had had our product, I think it would have been a very different proposition. So that was really the first conversation and the vision. But I want to hammer this home. What underlined all of it was we can't just be another clothing brand. We have to be a brand that means something more. And that was where the mental fitness idea came out of, marrying this idea of mental health and physical fitness, and, creating safe spaces for guys to talk about that, explore that, and curating stories and experiences that help people think about mental fitness in a different way.
Absolutely. And what, you were very clear, it sounds like, on what you wanted the product to look like, right? Something like I'm wearing right now, the hat, right? But a first step from a brand perspective is a name. How important is a name for any brand, and why was Rhone the right name for you?
It's tough. That's a very good question. I feel like there's lots of brands that have succeeded with, what I view as like maybe not the best name. So I think its importance is only as relevant as you can connect it to a marketing story. We liked it because, again, we were trying to be the opposite of Lululemon, right? So it was monosyllabic, right? One syllable. It was masculine. It was premium. We loved kind of the sounds of it. We loved the connection that a lot of people made between us and the wine that comes from that region as well. And then we started to kind of put pen to paper about what the marketing story could be. And we looked at the Rhone River as, okay, what's the history of the Rhone River? If we're going to talk to this customer, chances are he's interested in history. Well, the Rhone River was actually a really important functional trade route that ran throughout France and into Switzerland. And it was also a beautiful region. And so we loved this idea of aesthetic being beautiful, but also functional. That represents our products. And so we were able to kind of tie it back to this marketing story. And ultimately, that's why we picked it. Another funny thing that's come out of picking the name is when you say it to people, they make you spell it, and it's very easy to spell. And so then they have the website address right in their head, right? So is it ROAN? And you're like, no, RHONE. Then they have the website, automatically in their head. And once they spell it out, they remember it. So that's kind of like a funny byproduct that we didn't expect. I wish I could take credit for that.
I love that. I love that. And when you're just talking about first-time founders, I don't know. I wish I pulled up the stat, but I believe it's like 90% of first-time founders fail, including myself. Fail, right? In quotation marks. What made the secret sauce of Rhone? What made Rhone different?
Well, Nate was not a first-time founder. He had had a business before, before he started Rhone. So we had a lot of the benefit of his knowledge coming out of that. I think we surrounded ourselves with really good and smart people. And that includes like both our internal team and our team of investors and our board of directors. And when you stand for something deeper, when there's a cause behind your brand, people are willing to do more for you, right? When it's not just this quid pro quo exchange of, hey, here's some product, will you post about us? Instead, we just send product and we say like, hey, here's what we stand for. We stand for mental health. And when we have those conversations, even when we had conversations with, there's been a number of large celebrities who have been interested in endorsing us, but ultimately we can't make the financial side work. Every time what comes out is, I love what you guys stand for. I love your mission. I love your cause, your cause-based branding. And so, I would give a lot of credit to the people that surround us.
I want to dig in there on the mental health side. Men's mental health, especially 10 years ago and probably still today, a little taboo. Even when I tell my friends I go to therapy, they're like, some of my guy friends are like, what? Like, you don't need that, blah, blah, blah. How did you go about making men's mental health not taboo? And why is it so important to you and your brother?
Yeah, I'll actually take the second part first, because I remember when we were having these initial conversations, there was a point in time where I believe it was Nate, but it could have been somebody else in the room, was like, I feel like a little bit of a phony talking about this because I don't feel like I'm not truly affected by mental health. Like I don't have anxiety and depression and suicidal thoughts and something like that. And literally like 20 minutes later in the same meeting, Nate got a text that a friend had killed himself, that one of his friends had killed himself. And I didn't tell him in that moment, but the thought that occurred to me, and I told him later, was even if it doesn't affect you in a disease state, it still affects you and it affects the people around you. And we've all been affected by it at this point. I don't know a single person whose life hasn't been touched by mental health challenges and issues, whether it's themselves, a family member, a friend, a colleague, a coworker, the list goes on. And so we care about it because it is something universal at this point. And with men, it's a real epidemic. Men are more likely to commit suicide. They're less likely to seek professional help. If they go and seek professional help, 80% of the time, they never return for a second appointment. They're more likely to suffer from symptoms of, suicidal thoughts and depression and anxiety than women in a lot of ways. And it seems to affect men disproportionately because inherently it seems as though men are just less comfortable talking about it. Like your example with your friends, it feels like we're less supportive in a lot of ways of, people's mental health journeys and seeking help and that sort of thing. But if you get men into a space where they feel safe and they feel comfortable, actually we find that they're more than willing to open up. They're more than willing to be vulnerable. And, they just really need that space. And the first part remind me of what the first part of the question was, because I was so focused on the second.
Making it not taboo.
Making it not taboo. We view ourselves as not experts. And so we don't speak to the disease states. We don't say, if you have depression, anxiety, we're going to help you. What we say is we view it as truly as mental fitness, or, we've even thrown around the term mental flossing because, people with good teeth floss every day. That's just like a foundational principle, right? It's the same thing with mental health. We think a little bit of work every single day, right? A little bit of prevention can can really help you long term. So that's kind of the message that we speak to, is like, just do these little things and kind of find your own way. Is it breath work? Is it cold plunges? Is it yoga? Is it just talking to someone? Like, what are the very basic, simple things that you can do to increase your mental health, so that, just like flossing, so that if you get a really bad cavity, right, it's not like the rest of your teeth are falling out. Or, if something really bad happens to you in life that really challenges your mental health, you at least have a foundation to draw on. And at that point, if you are in a disease state, we absolutely can provide resources to direct you to get help. But we've made it taboo, I believe, because we've taken it into we've broken it into these small steps and really connected it to think, or helped people connect it the same way that we think about fitness, which is a little bit every day helps a lot long term.
Absolutely. And there's something so poetic too about, right, everybody is taking care of not everybody, but it's told you, take care of your physical health, take care of your physical health. But they are one and the same when it comes to it. Right? When you go for a run, you feel better, right?
They're intrinsically
go
connected.
hand in hand.
There's no question about it. They are intrinsically connected. I find that when my mental health is at the worst state, my physical health just follows suit, right? And so it's not that taking care of your physical health can impact your mental health, can solve all of your mental health issues, but I do think the two work very, very well together.
So talk to me about getting your first customers, as well as, actually, let's just start there. How did you get your first customers, and was there like any marketing play? Because getting your first customers and getting them to rep your stuff and getting it out there and talking about them and giving them a 10-star experience is so important.
Yeah, we were always obsessed with this idea of like brand evangelists. And so finding people that really believed in not only the mission, but the product, and really loved the product. And so I would say our first customers were like purely word of mouth. We come from a big family. Like, I have, 50 plus first cousins on one side. And so, we just have like this largely built-in natural network that was willing to support us. And I'm really grateful for a lot of their early support. And not only their early support, but the way that they would talk about the product and live the brand. And, at any point, like, we had cousins making fun of guys wearing Lululemon and, offering them an alternative. Right. And so at any point, we just felt like we got so much support by the people that we chose to surround ourselves with. And word of mouth was definitely the first thing. But also, orders started to come in by people who were searching for an alternative, right? This theory that we had that men wanted an alternative for Lululemon was actually spot on. And there were so many men reaching out that said, I can't wait till you expand your product line. I'm a runner. I need like real running shorts, right? And I love what you guys are doing. So, really staying true to the brand was also very, very important, and sticking true to our proposition. And then, taking care of the basics. We hired a really amazing SEO, Facebook marketer early on, who ultimately came on full time for a bit and is no longer at our company. But he taught us a ton about that world, and we had no idea about that world, right? And how to optimize ads, and he did some really clever things with SEO. I remember one of the things he did was when people would search for the Lululemon ABC pant, right, and they'd search ABC, he put our ad first, and it said, easy as 1, 2, 3. Try the commuter pant. It's better, right? And so like simple things like that those minds are just naturally attuned to, really helped us out in the early days.
Absolutely. And I love just asking founders this question, but while building this brand from scratch, what are some of the scrappiest things that you did and your co-founder and your brother did from a marketing perspective?
Yeah. There's a lot. Like, we were setting up tables at events, right? Doing trunk shows at different fitness studios. For me personally, I was put in charge of photo shoots pretty early on, because we quickly found how expensive those could be, right? If you outsource everything, it can be very expensive. And so, instead of hiring a stylist and a makeup person and all these extra people, like, that was just me in the early days. So we would be hiking up the side of a mountain, and I'd be holding like 20 hangers of clothes on either side of me, not able to use my hands, right? Just like scaling up this mountain, almost falling off several times. And it would just be me and a photographer and a model, and like that was it. And that was how I kept costs down. Nate's done a ton of things. One of the funny things we did a couple years ago was he was going to run the London Marathon, and we had just introduced this shirt, the commuter shirt, and it's like a performance button down dress shirt that you can wear to work, you can wear under a suit, and it's amazing. It breathes really well. And our product guy was like, "Hey, I went for a run in the shirt and it was actually kind of amazing. I just wanted to see like how it would perform." And so we were on with another one of our finance guys, and he was like, "Well, if it's that good, Nate should run the London Marathon in it." And he did. And he videoed the whole thing, and we made it into a whole campaign about, stretch your limits. And it cost us, next to nothing, because it was our CEO who was already going to run it. He was already there in London. But we started to put some paid money behind it, and it really resonated with people. So there's lots of, those little scrappy things, and there's lots of people who have worked for us who have been incredibly, we like to call it grit, right? This idea of just passionately pursuing things that mean a lot to you and doing it by whatever means necessary. And that's really what we try and preach to our team is, grit is not about falling in love. It's about staying in love. So it's easy to come to Rhone, like we talked about with sports marketing. It's easy to come to a place like that and have the shine wear off really quickly. But if your passion doesn't keep you motivated, then, you don't have it. You don't have grit.
Absolutely. Yeah. My last company was actually called Grit. So, right on brand. I have to ask you too, just looking back, what is one marketing play that just is your absolute favorite other than the London Marathon?
Yeah, we've done a lot. I shot a video. It wasn't like a super successful marketing campaign. But I shot a video that was called Promises to Keep. And I believe it was Christmas of 2018. It was like a Christmas message. It's on YouTube. You can go search it up. But it's kind of this story. So it's using a poem by Robert Frost. And it's this story about a dad who gets home from work. He's about to leave for like a run. And his son was like, "Wait a minute, you promised to read me this book." And he's like, "I'll be home for bedtime. Like, I will read you this book." And he makes a promise. And he goes out and he runs and he comes back and, reads his kid that book. And that was based on a personal experience I had with my son. And so it was a really meaningful production to put together. And I think it's a message that resonated with a few people. And again, like, we weren't selling any specific product with it. We were just kind of trying to make a feel good message for Christmas. But it's one of my favorite pieces that we've ever done.
I got to check that out. And what lessons from fatherhood have you taken? You have four, proud kid. You're a proud father of four. What lessons have you learned in life in general that have helped you out throughout your way?
Well, first of all, like, I get why people are scared to have kids. I really do. I was so scared to have kids, and like, it was my wife that was like, "We can do this." So, not necessarily, I would say first lesson is don't borrow the problems of tomorrow is something we always say to each other, right? So like, worry about the present, right? Do what you can do to kind of control the present, and don't borrow the problems of tomorrow. Because of course, the first place my mind goes whenever they get sick or run a fever is like, oh, this is like, this is the end for them, right? You're so worried. There's these little pieces of your heart walking around every day, and you're so worried that something will happen to them. So don't borrow the problems of tomorrow. The second lesson I would say is take accountability and teach your kids to take accountability. So, not a perfect parent by any stretch of the imagination. There's times where I lose my temper or I yell, and I always try and take that child one-on-one and apologize and take accountability for the things that I've done wrong. And tell them, like, I'm not perfect. I am trying. I will try and get better. I'm sorry, that I lost my temper, or that I did that wrong, or that I forgot about that. And then the third thing, and it's actually tied into this video, is I think a lot of parents are very hesitant to like make promises. And again, it's kind of tied into the accountability piece, but like, that relationship, that trust that your child has with you, just teaches you a lot about, I think, why people are the way they are, right? I think everybody just deserves a little bit more grace, a little bit more patience, because, at the end of the day, it's imperfect parents raising imperfect children. And that's just going to collide to provide us with enough, I hate to use the word trauma, but enough issues with our trust that, sometimes it's hard to work with people that grew up in a scenario where they didn't have a lot of trust. And so, building that with your kids, I think is so, so crucial. So don't be afraid to make promises and really focus on building trust with them. The funny thing is like so much of it is instinctual and so much of it is just like caring enough to be there and show up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm sure you're a great role model for your kids as well. I want to talk about the launch of the women's brand, right? I'm actually, and our company's actually helping Dr. Squatch as well as Joggy launch their women's brand. And that comes with its own, Pandora's box, right? That's a lot. That's expanding the brand completely. There's changing in messaging. You're appealing to a brand new consumer. What was the decision? Why launch into the women's space? What opportunity did you see there, and where's that headed?
So, why launch into the women's space is a really convoluted answer, but what it came down to is most of our team are just these unbelievable women. They're just like, they're the ones driving our business. Shout out
Clara Berkeley.
Yeah, Clara Berkeley among many others, too many to name. But these amazing women who, loved the brand, loved working in menswear, loved the product, but you could tell they wanted something that was built for them. And the other thing that gave us a ton of confidence is we got a new chief product officer about 3 years ago. Her name is Kelly Cooper, and she is unbelievable. Like she is a savant when it comes to product. And when she started to take me through what her version of Rhone would be, she said very much, you must allow me to build the best women's line that exists. And I said, yeah, I think we can do that. So we had the desire because of all these women that we were surrounded with every day. And, shout out to also my wife and my mother and all of my sisters and sister-in-laws. Like they all inspire me in so many different ways that we wanted to create products for them. But we didn't just want it to be any product. So it was that idea of like taking the vision and marrying it with incredible confidence and a new chief product officer that led us to think, yeah, we can absolutely do that. From the brand perspective, what we really saw was we didn't have to change anything. We didn't have to change much. The messages that we were pushing out were applicable to both people now, or to both sides of the aisle, both to men and to women. And, this idea of pursuing progress and being mentally fit and, understanding that you don't have to be a perfect model doing yoga in a sunny studio, because that's what all female brands are doing. We wanted to show the real grit and passion and perseverance that makes our brand so unique and applies very much as well to women. And so I'd be lying to you if I told you we didn't change anything. We changed some things in terms of our font and our color palette just to make sure that it wasn't so immediately strikingly male driven. But, we didn't change much else. We didn't change our tagline. We didn't change our main, brand vision or our brand purpose, because what we felt was that we were speaking to women who loved the brand before and wanted products that were made for them.
Absolutely. And last thing, and before we get into the quick question round, which is my favorite, timing's everything, right? I'm sure you were thinking about this women launch for a while, years. What made, when did you launch exactly?
We launched in April of this year.
And what made April the right timing?
Again, for us, it was getting the product right first, right? We didn't want to launch something that was subpar. And April was the right timing for us because we really focused on this idea of a course-to-court collection. We saw a huge increase in female golfers and female tennis players, and we saw a real lack of product in that area, especially from some of the more well-known brands. And so we became the official partner of the LPGA, and we really tried to push into golf and into tennis, and we supplied products that really support those activities and are differentiated in terms of the idea of they're both performance, but they also look really good. And so April was the perfect time because that's when people are starting to think about their summer activities and the summer sports and getting outside. And for us as a business, it was the right time because we felt like we had a really strong foundation on the men's side, and the opportunity for women's was right in front of us.
And not to mention women's sports too, just absolutely
exploding. Yeah, absolutely taking over. Yeah, it's very interesting.
So I think that's a good place to start wrapping us up and get us into our quick question round.
Let's do it.
Perfect. So before we get into the quick question round, we need to give a big shout out to our sponsor, Open Fortune. Open Fortune owns the Fortune Cookie as a media asset, reaching 47,000 Asian restaurants and putting ads on the back of Fortune Cookies, leading it to be one of the world's most creative ad canvases, working with Dr. Squatch, Jockey, and plenty of other brands. So without further ado, we got to pop open one of these Fortunes. And I would have sent you some, but again, a hiccup on me. So I'm going to open up one for you.
All right. Awesome.
Mine goes, this is mine. Mine says, new perspectives await no matter how far the journey takes you. And the brand is Monos.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then I'm opening one for Ben. Ben is going to open it virtually through my hands.
Yeah, you can just Photoshop it in there, right?
Yeah, perfect. Traveling is not just a break from routine. It's a chance to create new ones.
That is good.
Sweet. Well, it touches on our podcast interview a little bit with your travel to Mexico. So without further ado, let's hit the quick question round. Person you'd most want to sit down to dinner with, dead or alive?
Walt Whitman.
Favorite city in the world?
London.
Is it okay to sleep with socks on?
No.
Favorite rom-com?
Favorite rom-com? I'll say The Holiday.
Oh, it is a great one. Best spot to eat in Connecticut?
Best spot to eat in Connecticut? Colony Pizza.
I love Colony Grill, yeah.
So good. Colony Grill. Yeah.
You ever been to Archie Moore's?
No.
Wing spot in Westport, I believe.
Someone mentioned this the other day. Someone in our office mentioned that. I'm going to go there the next time.
Yeah, me and my buddies. That was that in Colony.
Yeah, that's the spot.
Favorite BYU grad?
Favorite BYU grad outside of my wife? You mean like a famous one? Steve Young. Yeah. I mean, she's number one. But the well-known one, I'll go with Steve Young.
In 40 years from now, what will people be nostalgic for?
I think driving cars like the old-fashioned way. Like, I think you're already starting to see this a little bit. Electric. I don't know why my iPad does this, by the way. I'm sorry. But like electric. I drive an electric car, by the way, just so you know. But I miss like driving a stick, and I miss like being able to drive, the way that we used to.
That'd be kind of cool if like stick shift car. It's not going to happen, but like stick shift cars come back in style like record players do.
Yeah, I kind of want my kids to drive stick because I feel like it's impossible to text and drive if you're driving a stick.
It's true, and there's always that like one moment you get a cheaper rental car. Yeah.
You feel so awesome when you drive a stick. There's no question about it.
Also, like, how old are your kids?
Oldest is 10, youngest is 4 months.
When the time for them to get on dating apps is saying a fun fact that I can drive stick.
I got married in 2010, and I feel like I caught the last chopper out of Nam in terms of dating apps. Like, I feel like I dodged that whole thing, and I feel so lucky. I'm not gonna lie.
We'll cut this part, but I met my girlfriend Molly. She's fantastic. I met her on a dating app, but I feel like I'm also one of the anomalies.
Yeah, for sure. I've heard horror stories, but I'm sure there's many success stories.
You got to kiss a lot of frogs.
Yeah.
Top 3 CEOs right now.
Ooh, top 3 CEOs right now. I'll put my brother Nate as number 1. I think he's awesome. Not exaggerating. This is tough. He just took a little bit of a hiatus, but Davis from Cotopaxi is also an incredible CEO. He just took a slight hiatus. And I really like what Mike Chernow is doing with Creatures of Habit. If you're familiar with his brand.
I'm actually not. I'm going to check it out after.
Yeah, so it's like a performance oatmeal brand, and I think he just lives the brand. Like, he's just one of those CEOs that lives the brand. I'll throw another one in there, Nick Bear of Bear Performance. Really, really incredible guy.
One thing, speaking of your brother, one thing people don't understand about founding a company with your brother is blank.
That the business can fail, but we'll never fail each other. We'll always be brothers. We'll always love each other.
What's the worst advice you've ever been given?
Worst advice I've ever been given. I feel like you get a lot of really bad advice when you get married about like relationships from people who carry a lot of baggage. And the whole like don't go to bed angry thing drives me nuts. Like just go to bed, get some sleep, because you're not yourself when you're not sleeping well.
I like that. If you could, speaking of good advice, if you could put one message into 10 million fortune cookies, what would the message be?
I'm gonna borrow a quote from Hemingway. Never mistake motion for action.
In one sentence, how would you sum up the internet?
Whew, the best and worst thing that ever happened to us.
Who's somebody you think should hop on this podcast?
Pete Nelson from Sisu Saunas. Really cool guy. Very interesting story. Amazing product.
Amazing. Would love to talk to him. I'll have to reach out.
Yeah, I can connect you.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be actually awesome. And then last question. In 10 years, you can catch Ben Checketts blank.
Still at Rhone.
He's crushing Rhone. Hey, man. Well, Ben, I really appreciate the time. You absolutely crushed it, and super stoked for our audience to get a ton of value out of this.
Great. I hope they like it. If they don't, they can email me.
Sweet. Awesome, Ben.
All right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Sweet. All right.
All right.